Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. I have a return guest. I have Bailey Smith back on. She was last on the podcast approximately a year or so ago. Now she's back on because she has written a book, Married to an Illusion, a survivor's guide to identifying and escaping narcissistic abuse. Bailey Smith went through more than 2 decades of torment, married to a narcissist who physically, mentally, and verbally abused her and her 3 boys. And Bailey says for every pain there is wisdom, for every loss there's gain, and for every tear there is a purpose. And out of these truths, she has determined to write this book and use her experience, wisdom, research, and resultant strength to be a force for change. And she sure is. And she has endured this for a purpose so that through her stories, she can teach more powerfully what needs to be done to stop this cycle of abuse. And sharing is healing. And what she endured and what she did to help others to make a difference has been phenomenal. She also has a radio show called Never Give Up, and that's on every Tuesday. And I welcome you back, Bailey. What
Hi.
drove you to write the book?
Well, you just said it.
Ah!
When you go through something very traumatic, there's so many ways that you can get through it, get
Mhm,
through the healing journey, healing process. And I would say, you know, after I was close to getting my divorce, after probably about 3 years of post-separation abuse, um, and finally my divorce, I had said to myself, um, I went through this for a reason, and I have to make meaning out of it. And I had decided then and there, I'm going to write a book. But I had to get healthy. And
mhm,
went through I'm still in therapy 6.5 years, my same therapist. I went to group therapy. A support system is the only way to get through this. Um, I had I had 3 years of police reports. I had hundreds and hundreds of texts and emails and a story.
mhm,
And I knew when I finally learned that I was an abused woman after 20 something years of marriage, um, and I started learning about narcissism, um, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I was an abused woman. Wow. And I had no idea.
mhm,
And then I started to learn by speaking to people because I was on other I was guests on other podcasts prior to starting mine. I was a host on another podcast for quite some time, a co-host. And I was speaking to all kinds of different people. And there are so many people out there that have no idea
mhm,
that they're abused, or that they're being abused. They have no idea that any of this exists.
mhm.
And so, you know, when I came to you and I said, I need a writer. I can't do this alone. And you introduced me to your publisher, Melanie. Um, we started the journey of writing, and it was a long process. Um, you know, I'm still like, the book came out a couple of days ago, and I'm still in that, I'm sure you know what it feels like. Like, it's like not even believable that it's finally done, you
Mm,
know. But like I said, it's I had to help others. I
mhm,
had to share my stories, my mistakes, um, the changes that we need to have, starting with the police. Um, you know, um, what happens if we don't? Our children are affected horrifically, which is what I live with now. Three young men who are on their journey, which is lifelong. You don't get over it.
Mhm.
Somebody said to me this weekend, so the book is done. So now you have closure. I said, I've had closure.
Mhm.
The closure wasn't the issue. Um, um, I created my closure through learning and doing my podcasts and therapy. Um, this was for others. This
Mhm.
book was for others, really, like I said, to go through something like this, um, you want to teach others that maybe in maybe in your shoes and don't know they're in your shoes,
Mhm.
or are struggling and don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. So there's really so many different, reasons for doing the book. But again, education, awareness, education, community support. Those are the main things. So
That's excellent, because your book is, broken down into 4 sections as well.
yes,
And so in the first 2 sections, each chapter is laid out, like, in a show and tell type of format. So, you're revealing traits, abuses, and terms related to narcissism. And, a lot of people don't know how subtle narcissism is, or the abuse,
yep,
because it comes in also like financial abuse, and you don't realize that when you're in it.
yes. In that regard, I was very lucky because we ran a business together and I took care of all the finances.
Mhm,
So in that sense, I was lucky. I
mhm,
was also very lucky that I didn't have to deal with family court like you did and so many others. As a court watcher, I see horrific, horrendous stuff. Um, but I went through other things
mhm,
and verbal, mental, emotional manipulation,
mhm,
um, physical, um, and your children witness this stuff,
mhm,
and it slowly creeps up on them, just like it slowly creeps up on you. I remember when they were young, and he would get angry, and I thought he had anger issues,
mhm,
and and I used to say to him, your children love you so unconditionally because he did not grow up in a home like that, and they look up to you, they emulate you, and I have 3 boys, and you're their example, you're their role model. I remember they were really, really young then,
mhm,
and I see the effects of what happened because of post separation abuse. Excuse me, post separation abuse. Um, I see how badly the damage is, and you know, it is. This is why I fight for all these little kids, all these young kids, and I do court watches. And I'm out there advocating because the kids are our future,
mhm.
and we have so many unhealthy women and men out there, and mostly men, but many women. Um, and and I mean, what's this world going to be? Who's going to run our country?
Right. And
I mean, already it's bad.
right, and they say children are resilient, and I was reading an article where they're not resilient.
Maybe when they're very, very young, but not when they're teens and they're watching their mother be
Mhm.
beaten or um, thrown at them or arrested or I mean, this is behavior they learn,
Mhm.
you know. Um, yes, kids can be resilient, but then you have the ACEs, which is adverse childhood experience, which results from trauma. And that's what my kids are experiencing.
Mhm.
And it's very scary. It's a very, very, very scary thing because I live every single day watching my children, and you can't get over that.
Mhm.
You can't get past your kids' pain until they get their closure and have peace,
Mhm.
you know? And it's a long journey. It's a
Mhm.
long, long journey. And this is happening to your next door neighbor. This is
Mhm.
happening to the person behind you. And people have to start opening up their eyes and learning about all of this, or being open-minded, or getting educated, and being kind and empathetic and understanding. And again, you cannot get through this without a support system.
Mhm.
If you don't have a support system, you are going to not get through this.
It
It's
yeah, we were talking earlier, and you said that you had to change phones. Um,
Yes.
y
So I basically, when I was separated, when I first got separated, um, I went through stalk. My ex stalked and harassed me, and um, I was very trauma bonded. And trauma bonded is when you're codependent, very codependent. So trauma bonded is a narcissistic term, that's in my book. Um, and I have an index in my book with all the terms. I think pretty much most of them. I keep seeing new ones pop up, but when you're very codependent, someone you're with so many years, and you rely on them for so much. I mean, he was very involved with my children, until he went absolutely out of his mind.
Mm.
But so his obsession, remember, I was the main supply for when you are married, when you're in a relationship or married to a narcissist, they have a main supply,
Mm.
which is the person they are with the most, and then they can have many other supplies, which is other women in their lives. Um, and I don't believe he ever loved, because narcissists don't know how to love. I
Mhm.
think there was an obsession. And when he started realizing I may not take him back, he started stalking and harassing me. And that's where the police messed up and failed me. And and I put a lot of that's in my book. And he had hacked my phone. He had hacked my computer. He had um, broken my phones, broken computers, stole pictures that were my pictures that I took for myself because I had become so tiny, and I very obsessed with my image. Um, Not as a narcissist, but because I had image issues. Um, and you know, my Facebook was hacked.
Mhm.
Um, I remember staying for safety reasons at my parents' house and watching him from my mom's account. Um, he had posted pictures of me in my bikini, and, you know, pictures I would never, ever, ever put out onto the internet ever. And having conversations with people
Mhm.
until people realized it wasn't me. And I remember screaming and crying, and my father was holding me.
Mm.
Um, it was horrific. It was really bad. You know, advice, you know, when you when you have to plan your escape. When you finally realize you're married to a narcissist, um, you have to get another phone, have a safety plan, have people know what's what is going on. Um, you know, you have to be so careful because, unfortunately, one of the things that my abuser did was post pictures on the internet of me, and create ads on websites and Craigslist soliciting me for sex. I had men showing up at my door with my kids at home. It was horrific,
That
and
is.
it was
Oh,
horrific. I know he made a meme out of me. I wish we could have put it in the book. There's only so much you could put in the book. I mean,
mhm.
like I said, Melanie had to chop so much of it off. She's like, you're going to overwhelm people. And plus, it's a show and tell book, so it's not just my story. It's learning lessons. We put every narcissistic term in there that we possibly could have. Um, you know, mental, verbal, emotional control, all that kind of abuse that's not physical, financial, sexual, is coercive control.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that people have to learn about.
Yes, that's a big one.
It's a very big one. And somebody, just like Marianne did a tribute to my book, I had somebody do a tribute on coercive control because there was only so much that I could put on my own into the book. My goal was to put my story, my lessons, and the narcissistic stuff. I wanted to put the police, the people that failed me,
Mhm,
um, those things, because those were the most triggering parts.
mhm,
Uh, so, and I wanted to educate people on you know one of the biggest things. I'm going to read you a little snippet.
oh, that's
The
good.
consequences of loving a narcissist and how dangerous it can be. Not to know that they exist, not knowing you are are being abused, not knowing what should be done to stop the abuse, protect yourself and your family, and especially if kids are involved. These are consequences of being married, of loving a narcissist, and the dangers. Um, you know, on social media, as you know, we're involved in a lot of the same circle. The amount of deaths lately, it's become
Mhm,
like the new fad. Kill the wife, kill the children, kill myself, kill the children, kill the wife. You know, this this is our world. Every
mhm,
single day, children are being murdered, women are being murdered. It was the number one death of women in the entire world,
mhm,
domestic violence. Um, when I was doing my research,
mhm,
now it's not number one, but in my time, and when I started this a couple of years ago, it was the number one killer of women.
mhm,
And every single day, there's not one day that goes by that something doesn't pop up on my feed or my Google. And I don't watch the news, um, because I see too much of it already on social media. But, I could have been one of those women. It could have happened. Um, so it's so important, education and awareness. And, people need to know what's okay, what's not okay in marriages, coming from religion, any religion or community. Um, you know, I grew up very sheltered,
mhm.
very naive. I write in my book, I watched the Brady Bunch
Yes.
and Facts of Life.
Mhm.
You know, my favorite movie was The Karate Kid.
Mm.
What did I know from abuse?
Mm-mm.
Hmm. And usually the perfect victim, we're handpicked. They find they seek us, they lure us out. They find the perfect victim. And I was young and naive, and nobody knew who spoke about 25, 27, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, who spoke about abuse and who knew about narcissism.
Mhm.
Psychologists didn't. It's now in the DSM-5 book, narcissistic NPD, narcissistic abuse, because it's learned. And,
Mhm.
and therapists and counselors and psychologists are now specializing in it. And they're constantly coming up with new um, they're constantly coming up with new, they're learning all about it.
Mhm.
Um, and these people can't change and they can't get better.
Mm-mm.
And that was my learning lesson for 3 years, almost
Mhm.
3 years, of post-separation abuse, trying to get him to get help and get better. And for my children's sake, you know, they needed their father. They loved their father. And yes, the ideal thing is for two people to love their children more than to hate each other. Um, but when you're not well, and this is something that people have to realize, when you see somebody, whether it's a man or a woman, hating on the other parent, you have to question, this is
Mhm.
the this is the mother or the father of of the mother of the children. Let's go talk about the mothers, right? How do you hate the mother of your children so much that you're willing to kill her or destroy her life
Mhm.
or to post her pictures on the internet? I mean, is that normal?
Mhm. But
And yeah, go
I'm
on.
sorry. But there are people that are so naive, they buy into the narcissist,
Flying monkeys, yeah, the enablers.
right, right.
But then they realize they're not well either
Oh.
because, you know, people think that I favor women. You know, I got a message on LinkedIn. You know, I would like to be on your podcast, but I know that you gear it to, women. I've had many men on my podcasts and all kinds. And and a lot of them were professionals, but um I'm watching more of what's going on with women and children.
Mhm.
I've met many men um, out there that are divorced or co-parent with their ex-girlfriend, and they love their children,
Mhm.
and they will you know, do whatever's in the best interest of the children. If that means having to babysit
Mhm.
because mom is working all kinds of crazy hours and just going over there and spending as many hours as possible so that the child could sleep in the bed every night because it's messing up their life and they're acting out.
Mhm.
Um, so I give those kind of people so much credit. But then when you see somebody, you know, hating on the mother of the children publicly and viciously and
Mhm.
turning children against their mother, or vice versa, you know, my abuser has been known to write stuff out there on social media how I took his kids from him. He left the state on probation. I
Mhm.
didn't take his kids from him. Um, you know, I didn't try and destroy their mom. Um, I didn't. even badmouth him. I mean, I just was trying to survive and keep my kids going and keep us from falling apart, just getting through each day. You
Mhm.
know, I'm not perfect, okay? Far from perfect. You know, I could be a better mother. I can be a more loving, caring mother. I have to work on that. We all have things to work on. I need to work on my triggers. But, you know, I was dealt with what I was dealt with, and I'm just doing the best I can and trying to share my education, what I've learned from what I've been through, um, and to help others that are out there that are going through this. And
Mhm.
you know, like you were asking me before about phones and you know, you have to make sure your phone is with you all the time. If you're in contact with your other partner, change passwords. You know, January is National Stalking Awareness Month,
Mhm.
and that's what my abuser went to jail for. In the end, it took 2.5 years of calling the police almost every day until they finally arrested him.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a statute, you know, it's a history and a pattern of 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 you know of texts. Um, really, it's a history and a pattern with an intent to harm, whether they harm you or not. And and I write this in my book. I used to one time a cop and a sergeant came to my house, and I had the law printed out and I shoved it in their face. I said, I don't have to prove it's him. I have the same text over and over. No, he's not going to use his real number, but I have hundreds of texts every
Mhm.
single time. He's threatening me.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's that's what it says. A history and it's a history and a pattern of the same threats over and over, with threatening to harm you, whether he does it or not. But you're in fear of your life. Wasn't enough until that's what they got him on in the end. So I had to suffer for 2.5 years. You know, it's a broken system, and will we ever see change? I don't know. I just know that people need to understand this is real and it's happening. And it's happening in every religion, in every neighborhood. You know, when something happens in somebody's neighborhood, they're like, oh, they were such a nice couple and blah 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 blah. Or we heard screaming, but we didn't want to get involved. I mean,
Mm.
you know, and then the next thing you know, somebody's dead.
Mhm.
Their children are dead.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think, you know, when things started out in your marriage, were there a lot of put downs? When did it start going bad? Like, how was it within 15 months or 2 years?
It was a lot. Okay, so I remember, and I write this in my book, a few months after we got married, we had a fight over the car. Okay. I had plans, he had plans, and I'm not going to get into the details because I want you to
Okay.
read my book, but there was anger and damage done to property, and um, I left. My parents came and picked me up,
Mm.
and he hoovered me and lured me back home with promises and love. That was like the first experience. I would say it was a couple of months after we got married,
Mhm.
and it was just the mind game, the
Mhm.
manipulation. They literally control you.
Oh, yes.
They control you, and it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. It take a few months. That's it. I mean, I was together with him for a year before we got married. And did I see signs? I was 20,
Yeah.
21 years old. You know, there was anger. Um, he came from a dysfunctional family. Um, so it was mostly anger, damage to property. Um, I saw him do things to other people, vengeance,
Mhm.
and I would question it. There was always great, great stories,
Mhm.
always great stories. And that's really what my marriage consisted of for 20 years
Mm.
together, you know, um, 21 years together, 20 years married. He was a good father for the most part. Um, you know, he loved sports, spent a lot of times with the kids. But looking back, I could say it was always about what he liked.
Mhm.
You know, they had to like his teams. It's like my youngest, who he hasn't had a relationship with him since he left the state of Florida. So he's 18, and so when he was 13,
Mm.
um, I alienated my child from him. My kids have phones.
Mhm.
The two other ones had what to do with him. My oldest went to live with him for 2 years.
Mhm.
I'm picking up the pieces now. Thank you very much.
Mm.
Um, but the youngest, just cut him off, and likes whatever sport teams he likes, and none of them his father would approve of.
Mhm.
Or sorry, sperm donor abuser would approve of.
Mhm.
We don't use father in this house.
Mhm.
I'm the father, the mother.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Um, I didn't choose
Mm.
this.
Right.
I didn't choose this. I got married, planning to be married for the rest of my life. I tried. I
Mm.
tried until I was a beaten to inch of my life. And my child had to save my life.
Mm.
My middle son had to save my life by breaking down a door. And that was it. That numbed me enough to finally say, "Mm, my kids are witnessing this." Mm-mm.
You know, I have interviewed a couple women that have gone through similar circumstances, and they're saying that, you know, they feel they should have stayed in the marriage just for the sake of the kids to get them to 18 and then leave. But because the post-separation period was just afterwards, they went after them in a courtroom and did so much damage. Was it worth even leaving? Is what they were questioning.
So my answer to that was, if he would not have beaten me, I probably would have stayed, even with all the information I had started learning, not only about what he did throughout my marriage, um, but about narcissism. I would have probably, got him every appointment, because that's what I did. Even when we were separated, post separation abuse, I was getting him into every kind of help possible, outpatient, inpatient, whatever,
Mhm.
therapy. But they can't get better. They lie
Mhm.
to their therapists. Um, you're the crazy one.
Mhm.
They paint you as the crazy one, and everybody will tell you that. But I couldn't bear to be in the same room as him after he touched me like that.
Mhm.
Um, I couldn't even look him in the face. And I had to, because we were a little bit co-parenting, a little bit. When he didn't have another supply, or when he had a supply and he had where to take them, he would take the kids and have them lie to me where they were. Um, so I wanted him in their life
Right.
so badly. Nobody wants to be a single mother.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be divorced. I mean, but when all I saw when I looked at him was the way he the like almost like blink as he was literally beating the crap out of me.
Mm.
And my son broke down the door and saw. He even gotten, I think he was trying to pull him off. He was 17. He was trying to
Mm.
pull him off of me and he got knocked in the face. I even have a picture of his bloody nose. I
Mm.
mean, it was accidental, but after that, and I didn't press charges right away. That was my biggest mistake. Um,
Mm.
that was probably one of the biggest faults, but everything happens for a reason.
Mhm.
So I have a strong faith, and um, I did not, even though my boys were so angry at me, there were times when I had so many chances to have them arrested. And, my middle son had cancer, which is an effect that happens to children who go through
Mhm.
witness domestic violence.
Mhm.
It's part of the ACEs, is physical health besides mental health, besides the trauma. The trauma sets them behind in their age.
Mhm.
So, we'll say they're at their trauma age. And I would say, like, my oldest, who's 25, is not really 25. I wouldn't say he's stuck at trauma age, um, when it all started, but he's not his age. I would say my 18-year-old, who hasn't had any contact with him by his own choice, even though I got full custody,
Mhm.
um, 5 years now, is probably the most his age.
Mhm.
Um, and all of them are in therapy.
Mhm.
Um, him the him consistently for 5 years, as am I. Um, but everybody is in therapy now, um, pretty consistent. And I would say he's more the 18-year-old than more his age, because he's been away from that. So, I understand people saying, what, which is worse, but
Mhm.
I have to make that decision. Again, you're really in a catch 22, because either way you're doomed. If you stay, you're doomed. If your kids are
Right.
getting screwed either way, your kids are
Mhm.
getting hurt either way, your kids are being damaged either way.
Mhm.
So I didn't deal with family court, but I dealt with post separation abuse, and my kids were right there in the middle of all of it.
Mm.
So what?
Right. No, I agree with you. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you
You're damned if
don't.
you don't.
You know
And yeah,
no, you go ahead.
no, I wanted people to know that I am blessed with all of this stuff. I still feel blessed. I have my kids, even
Mhm.
with all the stuff I have to deal with.
Mhm.
I don't feel sorry for myself. Well, sometimes I do.
You're allowed.
I had no one to celebrate my book with the other day.
Mhm.
Um, I had a glass of wine myself. Um, my children are very proud of me, I have to say. And they say it all the time. And my family. I have great family support.
Oh, that's
But
great.
see, now I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
What was your question? You asked me.
Well, I thought,
Oh,
do you
sorry.
oh, do you think in the
I'm blessed
future
I didn't have to go through family court, although
Mhm.
I did have a taste of it for a minute. And thank God that
Mhm.
judge, who I write about in the book for a split second, is no longer on the family court bench. Um, because what I see is horrific. So
Oh,
I totally
yes.
I understand what you went through, because I watch it at least 3-4 times a week.
Mhm.
Sometimes one after another. I mean, my ass hurts
Oh,
sometimes
yes. Yeah. I
from
un
sitting, besides all my working out, from sitting so much in front of the screen, um, or actually in court last week. And so I'm blessed in that sense. I'm blessed I didn't have to co-parent, because you can't co-parent with a narcissist.
Mhm.
Impossible. Because again, a parent that doesn't love It, a parent that hates you more than they love their kids is not, you cannot co-parent with.
Mhm.
And that shows an unhealthy parent, whether it's a mother or a father. It could be either one. And Marianne has done enough podcasts with so many different kinds of people. So she has seen the world on both sides. I have seen it. I've seen the narcissist, psychopathic woman,
Mhm.
but I see it more with men because that's who I'm surrounded more with.
Mhm.
But I know it goes both ways. Please, everybody, understand. I know it goes both ways. Um, I'm not biased. I
Mhm.
am for the best interests of the children. And if the best interests of the children and both parents can co-parent, even if they don't like each other,
Mhm.
but they make their children priority, that's the,
Mhm.
I mean, I wish we had more of that.
Oh,
And
yes.
we don't. And most women don't want to be divorced.
Mhm.
I don't think we want. It's horrible. I'm lonely. I
Mhm.
don't. It's very hard to find normal men
Mhm.
or vice versa. You know, um, I'm not settling. My children are way too important to me for me to settle.
Mhm.
Um, I know people that remarried and their kids were not happy about it, and we're messed up more. And my youngest asked me until he's done with college and out of the house, not to bring men around, not to bring a man, have a man in my life.
Mhm.
And I have respected that. And I think that if I would have, I don't, I don't know, if I would have found somebody normal and healthy, maybe they could have been a role model, but I
Mhm.
haven't. So,
Well, that's how I felt when I was divorced. I was very cautious. I wouldn't introduce my kids to anyone until I figured out if they were normal. But, do you think taking your book and maybe taking it to school districts and showing like, we gotta educate these young people.
you know, I'm involved in a through a shelter.
Mhm.
They got a grant and they started this organization. And I'm involved in a couple of committees. One of them is prevention, one of them is training, one of them is um, offender accountability, and one of them is child welfare. I'm
Mhm.
not on that one because I don't deal with, I haven't dealt really with that much. So you know how hard it is to get into the school systems, that because that's where it has to start. If
Right.
children at a young age know what's okay and what's not okay, and they're educated in a safe place, um, then we're then that's huge, right?
Mhm.
But our public school system is given money by the government, and the government don't want them educated,
Mhm.
unfortunately. Um, I know that this one, the prevention committee, um, does go into some of the schools in one of the counties, and they start talking about healthy relationships with teenagers. So there has been some approved education grants, um, but nothing to this extreme, and it won't happen. Um, and it's very sad
Mhm.
because we really need to start with kids as soon as they start uh, school. You
Mhm.
know, hitting and bullying and all these things, and then another problem is if they see certain things at home and they start to report it at school, then you have to bring in CPS or DCF, which is what we call it down here,
Mhm.
Department of Family and Children Services. It's a very big, it's again, it's a very big problem. But you know, I think that communities need to do it, or
Mhm.
private places. I was talking to my rabbi in the synagogue, for the synagogue. You know, in churches, we need to start educating children. What's okay wherever, community centers, which they are, which some there are that is happening in some community centers, or what the why, or places like that where you can have access to children.
Mm.
But again, if abuse is happening at home, parents are not allowing their children to go into those places to get educated.
Mhm. Mm.
So, I mean, I do believe that's something that we need to start with children young, what's okay, what's not okay
Mhm.
in relationships,
Mhm.
and obviously age level. But it's a very difficult thing. It's a very, very difficult thing. And as much as parents teach their children, if
Mm.
there's abuse at home, kids are stuck.
Mhm. And this is why we have so many dysfunctional adults walking around.
The childhood
Mhm.
trauma never dealt with, which is why I am on my kids' butts every day. You know, make sure you have your appointments, and you know, thank God they're all on top of their therapy now.
Mhm.
Thank God. But I look at the it took me, I mean, 6.5 years. I'm with the same therapist. That's
Mhm.
a journey. It's a long journey of healing, getting healthy, and knowing, do my children want to be unhealthy? No. Do they want to have healthy relationships? Yes. But it's a lot of work to get there.
Mhm. Well, I too, I've been seeing a counselor since 2013, 2014. Started with job stress, and then I had to go to a counselor to deal with someone who needed to go to counseling. Huh? But, you just have to keep, never give up, just like your show.
Yeah.
You
Never
know,
give up.
where can people get a hold of your book?
Well,
It's
ah,
beautiful,
my book.
beautiful.
Did you see it? There we go.
Yeah.
Married to an Illusion. My book is on Amazon. So if you Google Bailey Smith, Married to an Illusion, um, you could buy it in paperback or on Kindle for right this moment, or on my website, thenevergiveupshow.com. There's a link. I just got it done yesterday, and I want to thank my nephew, Schneer Smith, SCHNEUR Smith.com, who is a website designer. He helped. I did a little change to my cover, and he helped put it on my website, and he walked me through yesterday how to do the link, so I didn't have to go back to the original person in Pakistan or India or whatever.
Right.
So um, yeah, so you can get it off Amazon. Please buy it. It's very educational. There are things in there, a lot of, I wanted people to understand what I really went through. So I wasn't going to sugarcoat it.
Mhm.
So there are texts in there where I was threatened. There are police reports. Um, there's no real, there's my name, and then there's fake name.
Mhm.
I don't use names in there, um, except for the people that contributed to my book. Like Marianne's one of them, who signed releases to be able to write a tribute, or a, to write an article in my book.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, it's if you read my book, you will get an education on narcissistic abuse. You will walk away understanding what's okay, what's not okay, what's not okay. You'll understand what coercive control is, that domestic abuse is not just, um, domestic violence is not just physical.
Mhm.
It's way more than physical. Physical is a tiny portion of domestic violence or domestic abuse. It's mental, verbal, emotional, financial, sexual, control, um, manipulation. Every word in 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 that those categories. I mean, the 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 way these people plot it is so sickening. Is so it's it
Devious.
creeps up onto you, and you don't even know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, I could tell you from, I write a little tribute to my lifelong friends who I went to high school with. And I would say from my little crew, most of us are divorced and we went through horrific stuff.
Mm.
Um, and, you know, it's horrible. It's so unfair. And that's just my
Mhm.
little crew. So imagine like you take 5 people, right, in a room of, let's say, 100, right? I would say 3 out of those 5 are divorced or living with abuse. Maybe they don't even know it.
Mhm.
Am I
Mhm.
wrong?
No, I think you're right. I mean, because I didn't know I was being abused until I it just got worse as years went on.
Right.
Because 'Cause you're
People don't
naive,
even know.
right?
They don't even know. They're
So
so naive.
this is why I'm so glad you wrote this book.
Yeah.
People need a survivor's guide.
Yeah. And escaping a narcissist is not easy.
No.
When the minute you tell them you want a divorce, oh, are you in for trouble?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are in for trouble. It is. So you need a support system.
Mhm.
You need a plan. You need I mean, you need to be ahead of the game, especially if there are children involved, because they will use those kids as pawns
Mhm.
to hurt you any way that they can hurt you. You know, people said to me, I said, Bailey, what are you going to do if your ex finds out about this book? I'm sorry, my abuser.
Mhm.
Um, I said, what hasn't he done to me already?
Right. Right.
My pictures were on the internet. Um, I still get stalked. My family gets stalked. My mom gets texts from these sex sites. Can you imagine?
Oh.
She's almost 80 years old.
Aw.
We laugh. It's not
Oh,
funny. We
right. Well,
laugh,
it's
but
a
it's
dark
not funny.
humor. Yeah.
I mean, my father, a couple of years ago, my father's a rabbi. We were sitting, maybe 6 years ago, we were sitting right after I don't even know where he was, but he wasn't in the picture. And we're sitting at the table together, and my father shows me somebody texts him, some man texts him, "You want to have some fun?"
Oh, no.
His phone number was on some sex site.
Ah.
And we were laughing so hard. But this is not funny. This is stalking. This is
Mhm.
harassment. This is cyberbullying. But
Mhm.
but nobody's doing anything. I mean, I have 2 restraining orders. Well, sorry, a restraining order, no contact order, and there's 2 warrants for his arrest in Florida. He stopped paying back pay child support, so he doesn't have a New York State driver's license. He's about to, or should have lost his Florida's driver's license.
Mm.
I'm paying $75 a week. Hello, it was going to pay for my son's train.
Mm.
Okay. Um, and I still am harassed somehow or another. I get these random, like, group texts. That is so his MO. Unless somebody else is doing it, I don't know. But I ignore them. So, I mean, you're remarried, be happy, you know, move on. I
Mhm.
mean, so he so-called did, but you know, you have a woman in your life, live it, be happy. You messed up, you walked away, you left the family that loved you, you left your children. One of them tried to come back to you, destroyed him. You
Mm.
know, just you know, move on, be happy.
Right.
Let them heal, let them get healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, this book was really not about him. It was about what I went through.
Mhm.
That's really what my book is about, what I went through, what the lessons I learned, and and and, and how I got out, and how to help others. That's
Mhm.
really what this book is about.
Mhm.
I want somebody to walk away from reading this book and say, wow, now I know what narcissistic abuse is. Wow, now I know what coercive control is. Now I know what's okay and what's not okay. Yes, maybe I want my child that's you know starting to date to read this book, even though there are some stuff in there that you may not want to have them read, but let them read it. Let them know what's okay and what's not okay,
Mhm.
especially religions. It's not okay if a woman, if your wife or your girlfriend says, no, I don't want to have sex.
Mhm.
You can't take it. It's not okay. It's not okay to not to not have finances together, to work on finances together. That was a big problem in my marriage. He didn't
Mhm.
want to deal with 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 finances because he wanted to swipe his card whenever he wanted.
Mm. Mm-mm.
I begged him, let's sit down and go through the finances together.
Mhm.
You're just swiping your card whenever you want, and that's our food money,
Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm
you
sure this
know?
happens a lot.
So you could say, yeah, I was a financial abuser, but I really wasn't. I was just trying to survive, keep our family going,
Mhm.
you know?
And, you did the best you could, and now you've got this wonderful book out that's going to help so many
I hope
people.
so. I
Oh.
really, please, people go out there, buy it. Not only do I want it to become, you know, a book out there, and, I'm not making a lot of money on it. Um, I want people to get education. The
Mhm.
only way we're going to get some sort of change in this world and maybe save the next generation of, or even the children now, is for people to have education, know what's okay, what's not okay. Um, there are narcissists, there are NPD with that's mental health that can, we all have narcissistic traits. We all do, I take a lot of selfies of myself. Okay,
Mm.
so I'm a narcissist, you know, but psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissistic abusers can't get better. But we can avoid more kids becoming, young people becoming them, becoming narcissists. If we have the education, we get them the proper help when they're young, if they've gone through trauma. And that's really what I live every day, because until my children are happy, healthy, successful, in a good place, for a mother, for a parent that loves their children, it's very hard for us to move forward. Yes, I'm living my life, and yes, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to, and the self-care, and but this is what I was dealt with, and this is, I put myself out there
Right. I always
writing.
say advocacy sometimes chooses you, whether you know it's happening or not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But
I was gonna ask you, how can people reach you if they have any questions? Do you want them to
so on my website, the nevergiveupshow.com, which has all my podcasts, a link to the book, or again, you can go to amazon.com, look me up. There is an email address, there is
Mhm.
a space on my webpage, um, with my email address, which is um, the never give up show at gmail.com. But it's also on my website. So if you go to the nevergiveupshow.com, um, you can fill in information. I'm on LinkedIn. You can try and find me under Bailey Smith. I have Instagram, under the Never Give Up Show. I try to stay as private as I can
Mhm,
on my social media. Um, I'm sure you can understand, we when we've been stalked and harassed, um, we try and be as private as we can.
mhm,
So the best way is to email me.
mhm. Well,
So,
awesome.
and if anybody would like to have me on their show as a guest, um, reach out to Marianne or reach out to me, or if you'd like to be on my The Never Give Up show,
Mhm.
um, I'd love to have you.
Awesome. No, that's great. Hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. And please join us again with Bailey Smith. I'm going to have her back on and other exciting guests. Thank you again so much, Bailey, and
Thank
good
you for
luck with
having
your book.
me,
Oh,
Marianne.
yes. This is great. This will help others. Thank you.